We're going to need some extra help at tight end this week. Evan Ingram's injured. Chris Herndon won't end up being back because of an injury. 4 teams on the bye. Maybe a little extra assistance would do us good. How to get better tight ends. Oh, here's one. Better tight ends in 48 hours. Bingo. And it's only $150. Let's roll with it. Name, Jake Hubman. Address, 123, hashtag ChubbLifeLane. Credit card number. What's up, Headliner Nation? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle coming to you from the Draft.com studios. And we're going to be talking about tight ends now for week 6 of the fantasy football season. Like I mentioned, we're going to have some tough decisions to make this week, but I'm here to help you out. Let's jump into last week's hits and misses. You see a few of them there. 66%. Again, we really want to be at or above 70% moving forward. Super close. We're going to get there this week. I know it. And just to update you on rankings as well, if you didn't watch the quarterback video, rankings are going really well right now. 37th overall on Fantasy Pros, number 1 overall for tight end. So ladies and gentlemen, if you need help with your tight end, you've come to the right place. And again, let's talk about tight ends, the football kind. All right, Headliner Nation, let's kick it off. Thursday night football. There's no tight ends to start in this one. Right now for the New England Patriots, Matt LaCosse, Ryan Izzo, combined 11 targets on the season so far. 11 targets through 5 weeks. That is not anything to get excited over. And the release of Benjamin Watson. Now, again, a lot of people continue to ask about him. I said I wasn't interested in adding him because I felt like the tight end position was basically being filtered out of the offense for right now. Him being released says a lot about what they plan on doing with the offense. So I don't think tight end is going to be a viable position for this team going forward, and that's okay. Plenty of other weapons for Tom Brady there. For the New York Giants, no Evan Ingram this week. So Rhett Ellison is going to step in and be the guy. Will likely have the most snaps this week, but I do not see him being fantasy viable. Even in a pinch, let's stay away from this. The weather's not supposed to be good. Daniel Jones really doesn't have anyone else to throw to outside of Golden Tate. Let's just worry about leaving him on the bench. We'll find a better option elsewhere. Our matchup across the pond this week, Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Greg Olsen's going to be a start. O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, surprise, right, are going to be a sit. Let's talk about Greg Olsen and his performance over the last couple of weeks. He had 18 combined targets the first 2 weeks, and since then, 13 targets. So his targets have gone down drastically since the first week. 2 catches and 5 yards over the last 2 weeks combined. However, I will run with him for 1 more week. If he doesn't have a good week this week, then we're going to have to reconsider using him until Cam Newton gets back. Tampa Bay is giving up the second most points or fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends right now. So he is a good option this week. But again, if he doesn't perform, we're going to have to reconsider. Now for O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard is significantly outsnapping Cameron Brate by almost 30%, yet he's only seen about 7 more targets than Cameron Brate. I know in the news they've said that O.J. Howard is going to get his soon. However, I'm not going to run with it this week. The Panthers are giving up the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. I will go ahead and sit O.J. Howard 1 more week. And if this is the breakout week, we're just going to go ahead and chalk that up to being safe and leaving him on the bench, and we'll get him back in the lineup moving forward. Will Dissly is a perma-start moving forward. He has been a huge contributor to Seattle Seahawks, and for the Cleveland Browns, we're not starting anybody until David Njoku gets back on the field and healthy. Will Dissly, Cleveland is giving up the 8th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends right now. He is tied for 2nd in targets on the Seahawks, and he is 1st in touchdowns. So he is a legit weapon in that offense. This isn't just a streaming guy anymore. This is a guy that you use every single week. For Cleveland, last week they had 3 tight ends have at least 21 snaps. So 3 guys that are getting a majority of the workload there that are really splitting time on the field. Doesn't really give the opportunity for any single one of them to have a big game. It would take a big play. That's way too lucky, especially with the way the Cleveland Browns have been playing right now. Yes, I'll still trust Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham Jr., maybe even Jarvis Landry. I think Baker Mayfield bounces back this week. He has to. You can't do worse than he did last week, but I don't think a tight end is going to be a part of that equation this week. All right, for the Texans in Kansas City, let me just note on Travis Kelce real quick. I was very, very close to listing him as a sit. Now, I didn't end up doing it because Travis Kelce continues to produce top 12 tight end numbers every single week. So instead of listing him as a sit, I'm just going to let you know that there is a lot of risk with him this week. I think he could be a low-end tight end one at best, and let me tell you why. Right now, the Texans are giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. However, they are giving up the 6th most points to opposing wide receivers. So what I could see happening with the Texans this week and Travis Kelce is that they take him away, take him out of the passing game, really limit him, much like Detroit did a couple of weeks ago, and let Patrick Mahomes focus on those wide receivers. Make the wide receivers beat them. Don't know if Sammy Watkins is going to be out there this week. We have to wait and see. Tyreek Hill, will he be available this week? We'll see what happens, but I think Travis Kelce is really kept down in this game, and Houston limits him to probably right around 10 fantasy points per game. So he's going to have to find the end zone this week to be a solid play. I think he's a little risky, but if you own Travis Kelce, you are not benching him in any way, shape, or form. Now, with the Houston Texans, I put this on Twitter last night. Combine Darren Fells and Atkins. Both of these guys, Atkins and Fells, I took a little bit of a deeper look at them. Right now, combined 28 targets, 19 receptions, 247 yards, 5 touchdowns. They are accounting for 64.2 half PPR fantasy points. If you combine their performance, they are the tight end 3 on the season. Both of these guys are just outside tight end 1 status right now. The reason I have to list them as a sit, though, is because you do not know who's going to have the better play on any given week. Now, here we go. This is where we talk about streamers this week. For Atkins, if you're looking for a streamer, he is the guy that I would stream. This is a matchup that really could produce a lot of fantasy points, and Atkins could find himself in the middle of that. Fells has been the guy in the end zone so far. Atkins has been the guy with the volume. Atkins 2 touchdowns, Fells 3. I'm going to go with Atkins this week. If you need a streaming option, I think he's going to get you a couple of fantasy points, a few fantasy points. You throw him in there, at least he's not going to get you a 0 this week. But I still have to list him as a sit because I don't know if he can be a tight end 1 this week. But one of these guys has been a tight end 1 the last couple of weeks. So keep an eye on this matchup, see what happens moving forward. All right, in my quarterback video, I did not touch on this matchup. I just basically told you, no, don't worry about it. Now, that was before I found out Case Keenum was going to be playing. So Case Keenum, we know that he's going to be starting now. That's good news for Washington. He has been the better quarterback this season. He is the guy that has the most potential for that team to output some good fantasy numbers. However, for tight ends, I'm not interested in it this week. Miami is giving up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. But Bill Callahan, who has taken over as head coach, has been very, very, very vocal about establishing the run with the Redskins. AP, Chris Thompson, both of those guys this week could end up giving you decent fantasy production, especially if they can pull away from the Miami Dolphins and they don't have to play catch up or they don't have to go back and forth with them. If they can get the lead and just stick with it, I don't think you're going to see a ton of passes this week. I think you're going to see a ton of rushing attempts. And because of that, I don't trust Vernon Davis or Sprinkles. Davis being the guy that, is he going to be cleared and ready to roll? Sprinkles will be out there if he is not. Sprinkle. Jeremy Sprinkle, not Sprinkles. We're not talking about ice cream here. Anyway, Mike Gesicki, he's a permasit moving forward. Even if they've been playing from behind all year long and he still hasn't done anything. So he's not a guy that I'm even considering or even on the radar. Just go ahead and leave him on waivers for right now. For this matchup, I am going to definitely list Zach Ertz as a start, even though this is a tough matchup, and even though I said Carson Wentz was not a start for me this week because I don't think he hits 18 fantasy points, I'll still go with Ertz because I think he will be the most consistent and best option in this game in the passing game. I think he can hit his key and be a tight end 1 to be able to be a start this week. Now for Minnesota, Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith Jr., both of these guys, Kirk Cousins can barely get his wide receivers the ball. How in the world is he going to get these tight ends the ball? Don't worry about either of these guys. Ertz is the guy to focus on in this matchup. For the Saints and Jaguars, this matchup, again, nothing but sits. Jared Cook, I told you last week, it was my last time starting him. He was a tight end 1 last week. Finally found the end zone, but in this matchup, not interested in it. I'm going to move him to the bench. And more than likely, unless he has a really solid matchup moving forward, he's not going to be a guy that I'm looking at starting. With Jeff Swaim, we're going to go ahead and list him as a sit as well this week. They have not been targeting the tight end, and the Saints have been doing very well at limiting tight end this year. So no matchups for you to play in this game. Mark Andrews, perma start for us here at the Fantasy Headliners. He continues to produce good fantasy numbers for you. You're going to continue to put him in your lineup, especially when you get a team like the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, for Tyler Eifert and CJ Who's Your Mama, either of these guys, I'm not going to start them. They had an awesome matchup last week. Either of them didn't end up doing anything. I'm not interested in it moving forward. Yes, one of them may hit a touchdown. Now again, Tyler Eifert being the may there, but it's not enough for me to take that risk. More than likely, more cases than not, they're going to give you very low fantasy production, if anything at all. George Kittle continues to lead the San Francisco 49ers targets, receptions, yards. He's the main guy there. He's going to continue to be the number one target for Jimmy Garoppolo, so of course you don't sit him at all. Now for the two Rams tight ends, Tyler Higbee is going to be a sit for me because Gerald Everett has clearly become the number one tight end there. Yes, depending on what depth chart you look at, Higbee's still at the top, but that doesn't matter anymore. The reason I'm going to go ahead and start Everett this week is because it doesn't sound like Brandon Cooks is going to be ready to roll because of no Cooks. If there is no Cooks, I think that really gives Everett a lot of upside. And not only that, but Todd Gurley might be out this week. So basically taking those two out of the pictures and saying we don't need to worry about targets there. Gerald Everett could step up and have another big week if he's on your waiver wire. He is definitely a guy that I am streaming this week against the San Francisco 49ers, even though the 49ers have been very, very good at limiting the tight ends. Bottom three, lowest points allowed to opposing tight ends. So I will still run with Everett this week because he could see nice volume and find the end zone. No other team in the NFL allows more fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends than the Arizona Cardinals. So we're going to run Austin Hooper out there with ease this week. That's not even a question. If you own Austin Hooper, he's in your lineup. Now, with Clay, again, a guy that is there on the team, depth chart, all those good things. He's not doing anything, though. So nothing to see here other than Austin Hooper. He's the only tight end you're targeting in this matchup. Noah Fant's breakout has not happened yet. He hasn't really been relied upon on that offense, so we're not going to go ahead and start him. But with Delaney Walker, we'll run with him. The Denver Broncos have been really, really good at stopping wide receivers this year. Fifth least amount of points allowed to wide receivers in fantasy points. So for this week, they're going to have to focus on the run game. I really think that Derrick Henry is going to have a nice day. And on top of that, Delaney Walker is going to be the main target for Marcus Mariota. If they're limiting all the wide receivers and keeping them locked down, then Walker should see some decent volume, some decent targets. So because of that, that could return a decent fantasy day. It's risky. We'll still run with them this week. Nothing to see here either. Jason Witten, Blake Jarwin, and then Ryan Griffin. We were really hoping to get Chris Herndon out here this week. It sounds like he's going to miss at least a couple of weeks with his injury. So we're going to continue to have to run with Ryan Griffin, who's done basically nothing this season. So don't consider him. Yes, you could consider streaming Jason Witten. But again, with these tight ends, it's been about finding the end zone. If they find the end zone, great. If they don't, they're not a good fantasy reliable target for you. For right now, I'm just going to leave these guys on the bench this weekend and try to find someone out. However, if you desperately need somebody, then Jason Witten is the only person I would even consider in this matchup. And don't be surprised if he stays outside of the top 12 tight ends this week. Vance McDonald was able to make it back onto the field last week, which was great news not only for fantasy football owners, but for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is going to have an undrafted rookie free agent playing quarterback this weekend, first start of his career. So what could be good for him? A decent tight end. Vance McDonald wasn't a start last week. He could very well be a start this week because Hodges could be looking his way quite often. With LA, we're going to sit everybody in LA this week. Nothing has really been happening with that position outside of Hunter Henry, who hasn't been healthy this year after getting hurt to start the season. Virgil Green, Lance Kendricks, neither of those guys doing anything. Both of them are sits. And then Nick Vannett, he came over in the trade after Vance McDonald went down with the injury. However, McDonald was clearly the better option last week, even his return from the injury. Vannett is really just going to be an emergency option at this point if something were to happen to McDonald again. Monday Night Football, the Lions at the Green Bay Packers, and I'm going to go ahead and sit both players in this matchup. Jimmy Graham coming off a decent performance last week, but again, he's been very up or down. He's either hit or miss this year. He either gets you enough points or he doesn't. Detroit's been pretty good about limiting tight ends. They limited Travis Kelce a couple weeks back, did very good at doing that, so I think they can do the same thing to Jimmy Graham this week. And if Devontae Adams were to be back, I don't think he is, but if he were to be back, that only reinforces that. With TJ Hawkinson, again, don't know if he's going to be on the field this week. If he is ready to roll and play, then maybe consider him, but he's only played well in matchups that have suited him against Kansas City and against Arizona, two teams that are giving up the most points to opposing tight ends. Green Bay is not a team that is doing that. I will go ahead and skip on TJ Hawkinson this week. Leave him on your bench. Find a better option. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Not really let it flow, but we moved pretty quickly through these tight ends this week, and hopefully Jake will be getting the video that I ordered for him with his information really soon so he can work on his tight ends. Thanks so much, Headliner Nation, for tuning into this video. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button below and turn on the bell notification so anytime we go live or we drop content, you're going to know about it right away. Not only that, if you like the video, appreciate the content, hit the like button, and as always, leave any comments that you'd like to below. Thanks so much, Headliner Nation. Good luck in Week 6. We'll see you on the rankings episode, and of course, every Saturday night, Fantasy Headliners Live right here on YouTube, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much. Have a good one. We'll see you later.